Hello and welcome to People and Profit. I'm Pellegrin. Coming up, what do Austria, Sweden, Switzerland, and Taiwan all have in common? For economist Neil Lee, it's their ability to share the benefits of innovation equally across society. We'll discuss his latest book, Innovation for the Masses. Left to their own devices, we'll check in with the inhabitants of Port Talbot in Wales, home to one of the world's largest steelworks, where 2,000 jobs are expected to be slashed. Low labor costs, high-tech management of supply and demand, and tax loopholes. We'll see what makes Chinese fast fashion apps so competitive. Well, throughout human history, one of the major drivers of economic growth has been innovation. And economists of all stripes have attempted to understand what kind of factors lead to innovation. One of the prevailing theories, certainly one that has gained traction in Silicon Valley, is that fostering innovation requires freeing up the entrepreneurial spirit by reducing the role of the state. But what if innovation wasn't a goal in itself? What if innovation was a way for society as a whole to improve its circumstances? Neil Lee is a professor of economic geography at the London School of Economics, and he explored these questions in his book, Innovation for the Masses: How to Share the Benefits of the High-Tech Economy. He joins us now from London. Thank you for being with us. Well, perhaps a good starting point for this book could be the following question. Is inequality a cruel but necessary byproduct of the quest for innovation?
So look, there's such a thing as good inequality and bad inequality. The first few people who go from being poor to being rich, that creates inequality, but it can be seen as a good thing sometimes. But the question is what you do to sort of bring the incomes of the others up. And the problem is that some countries are good at doing that and others are not so good. The problem is that we often follow the countries which are not so good when we focus on innovation.
Well, your book focuses on 4 case studies of innovation for the masses. And I'd like to start with Austria, and specifically the region of Styria, which made the bet to double down on making its traditional industries, like steelmaking, more high-tech. This seems perhaps maybe counterproductive, but why was this move successful in this case?
So Styria is a really interesting example of an industrial region, like some you might have in France, like many we have in the UK, which managed to avert industrial decline. So whereas regions in the UK, for example, would just sort of let their industries decline without trying to sort of improve them, Styria invested a lot in R&D. So a huge amount of money went into focused research. Rather than sort of just producing more at a low quality, they started to produce things like steel at a high quality in ways in which other people couldn't do it. And the result was that the place, it's not a perfect place, but it survived and it's thriving in a way which other post-industrial regions across Europe aren't. Now, so part of the answer there is innovation. The other part, of course, is luck. But, they were in a good place at the right time. But really, it's a story which tells us that, innovation doesn't just have to be about high-tech sectors. It's not just about Facebook and Google. It can be about other parts of the economy as well.
I'd like to move on now to Sweden, which is also an interesting case, because it's almost the perfect response to this Silicon Valley view of innovation, because it has both a vibrant tech sector as well as a robust welfare state. So how can a high-tax economy also be one that drives innovation in this case?
It's a relatively high-tax economy, not as high-tax as it used to be, but relatively high-tax. And one of the things it also is it has the highest share of, one of the highest shares of unicorn firms, big, fast-growing tech startups of any place in the world. Now, if you look at it, it's got double the number of tech billionaires per capita than the United States. It's a sort of extraordinary success story. And it achieves this partly because of its strong welfare state, the sort of strong public services, the state which can help firms thrive and innovate. So really, it shows very clearly that low taxes, of course, no one wants high taxes, and taxes can sort of sometimes inhibit competitiveness. But on the whole, it shows really clearly that, if you can do taxes in the right way, you can sustain high tax base at the same time as highly innovative, dynamic economy.
Your only non-European case study in your book is Taiwan. It's now famously a leader in the semiconductor business, able to build the smallest and most high-performing chips. But actually there, in recent times, inequality appears to be on the rise. What's changed?
Well, so essentially Taiwan, when it was growing rapidly, up until about sort of 15 years ago, we think, 10, 15 years ago, it was growing rapidly and it was sustaining this with this was broadly shared. People were sort of doing well, even if you were sort of not working directly in the sort of tech sector. And part of this was about the sort of way in which the education system worked. So people were able to sort of get work, even if you weren't necessarily a sort of elite scientist, you could get a good job in some parts of the tech economy. But sadly, things sort of seem to be breaking down. It's become a big sort of election issue there. Essentially workers in, the workers in semiconductors or in their chip making plants, they do very well, but there aren't enough of these jobs to sort of bring down inequality. And they're not quite doing enough to bring up people who are not necessarily working in the high-tech parts of the economy. So it's a story essentially of growth with equity, which has now become sort of growth with inequality, which is quite sad.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to finally broaden to other parts of the world, especially the global south or the developing world. Are there any examples that come to mind to you of countries in that position that are currently showing promise in both their ability to foster innovation and tech sectors as well as development at the same time?
Yeah, so look, there's some great examples relatively soon, Africa's going to become the sort of hub of population growth of the world. And one of the things you can see is that there are some pockets of, these are small pockets, but pockets nonetheless of sort of innovation in, for example, there's clusters, some strong high-tech clusters in Nigeria, for example. There's some Kenyan businesses which are looking pretty good. At the moment, most of these are sort of serving local markets, but they're serving local markets in what looks like a sort of good, promising way. Now, the idea is that hopefully you'd start off with these firms serving local markets, but in the longer term, they would start to do stuff which is more innovative and help to really drive that development process.
Well, Neil Lee is a professor of economic geography at the London School of Economics. He's also the author of Innovation for the Masses, How to Share the Benefits of the High-Tech Economy. Thanks for being with us. Well, to the UK now, and specifically to the Welsh town of Port Talbot, home to one of the largest steelworks in the world. The site, now run by Tata Steel, is struggling to survive in a post-industrial nation. Its blast furnaces will be closed down because of the pollution they create, leading to the loss of 2,000 jobs. Eliza Herbert has this story on the town's inhabitants and their resentment against the company and the government.
For these steelworkers in Port Talbot, morale is very low. The announced closure of their plant's last two blast furnaces has shocked the community in South Wales, with approximately half of their 4,000 jobs set to be lost.
There's no other jobs like mine around here. Once the steel industry's gone, the area effectively goes into destitution.
The steelworks here were built over a century ago and employed 4 times as many people during the 1960s. The current owner, Tata Steel, says it now loses £1 million a day, which is roughly €1.17 million, and it wants to comply with the UK's carbon neutrality targets. The Indian conglomerate plans to follow suit with other European steelmakers and switch from coal-intensive blast furnaces to electric arc furnaces that are less polluting and require less labour. Port Talbot is one of the most polluted towns in the country, and local unions and officials are not wholly opposed to the switch to greener production.
Well, Tata's a business. We understand that, and they have to look at their business aspect. But they could have invested earlier to look at how we make plant better.
The UK government is contributing the equivalent of roughly €585 million to a €1.4 billion programme for the plant to switch to the more environmentally friendly method. However, they did not link that funding to the protection of jobs.
Well, Shein and Temu are two brands that have shaken up the fast fashion industry, which used to be dominated by Zara and H&M. With cheap prices and quick delivery times, the two Chinese platforms have gained a huge amount of market share around the world. But how do they do it? Well, Yuka Royer from France 24's Business Desk joins us now with the answers. Yuka, Shein and Temu's success is built on bringing Chinese factory goods directly to consumers around the world.
Well, Charles, both of them are app-based and use algorithms to send orders directly to factories around China and Vietnam and get them delivered quickly. And with €3 T-shirts and €10 wireless keyboards, it's hard to find a better bargain elsewhere. Last year, Shein's app was downloaded a whopping 262 million times globally, according to Statistica, while Temu's been seeing 30 to 40 million downloads every month since last summer. Now, Shein now serves more than 150 markets around the world and is the top retailer in the global fast fashion market, ahead of Zara's parent Inditex and H&M. Temu has clients in around 50 countries, even though the company is less than 2 years old.
And they've come up with a new supply chain model that's extremely reactive to demand. Tell us more.
Well, they have developed what they call an on-demand business model, as Shein explains on its website. Its digitalized supply chain enables it to collect real-time data like clicks, views, and orders, and quickly analyze demand. The company then places orders to suppliers in small batches and replenishes as needed. This reduces inventory risk, and unlike Amazon, they don't have to build huge warehouses. Shein says that this also minimizes overproduction and textile waste. But here in France, some lawmakers are accusing Shein and Temu of encouraging overconsumption through rock-bottom prices and are considering imposing penalties to offset their environmental impact. There are also concerns about where exactly their products come from and whether there's no forced labor involved.
And for the US at least, they're taking advantage of a very particular tax loophole.
Well, the US has a trade rule known as the de minimis exception in place since the 1930s. It currently allows parcels valued under $800 to enter the country duty-free per person per day. But since online shopping has exploded, so has the volume of goods coming from abroad. Last year, more than 1 billion de minimis packages came through US customs, a 650% increase over 8 years. A congressional report in July found that Shein and Temu alone were accounting for more than 30% of them. Some lawmakers are trying to reduce de minimis trade, but have met opposition from major shippers as well as other retailers.
Yukoroye, thank you very much. Well, that's all for this week. If you want more, you can watch all of our previous episodes on France24.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on our various social media channels. In the meantime, thank you for watching and stay tuned.